ending moment in the Euro crisis, which reminds me, I think it was Lenin said that sometimes nothing happens for a decade and then a decade happens in a week. I think we may be heading close to one of those weeks, and I just highlight for you again the point that he made about if Ireland is forced to make a strategic choice in its currency between the euro and sterling, and the euro is not necessarily seen, perhaps in the south, beyond the prism of the UK as being all that disastrous thing. A lot of benefits have flowed to us from it. I think there are significant implications for Northern Ireland in that will deserve considerable thought and reflection. So, our session, however, is going to go right from the strategic right down to the ground, where the men, and they are men, I note, I have nothing to do with that, on both sides of me, are working at the coalface, so to speak, of industry. And we have a title which refers to the island's growth clusters. And since we are in a conference about the island economy, I was recalling, and I looked it up again, that in 2006 the two British and Irish governments produced a comprehensive study on the island economy. And in the executive summary, first paragraph, first sentence, they said this: "The future vision must be of an island characterised by a strong, competitive and socially inclusive island economy with strong island-wide economic clusters whose development is not impaired by the existence of a political border." I hope what our speakers are able to show us now in the 6 years, I can't believe it, since 2006, that they have been able to move in, develop as clusters, engage in clustering type activities along the lines that that comprehensive study hoped to outline. So, a few ground rules first, as we are behind time. I have buy-in from the panel that they are all going to be strictly disciplined, and their 10 minutes each that has been allotted will be kept to. If not, there will be a discreet cough from the chairman. And if the chairman gets very impatient, he'll be rattling the glass with his pen. So, without further ado, our first speaker is Professor Paddy Johnston, I'm sure, who's very well known to you all, and as you would expect, has a long and distinguished career. Points I noted was that he qualified originally in my old alma mater in UCD, and then had time in the United States, particularly with the National Cancer Institute. Then he came back here to Queen's as a professor of oncology, and then was the director of the Cancer Research Centre for Research in Cell Biology. And since 2007, he's the Dean of the School of Medicine, Dentistry, and Biomedical Sciences. So there's another thing I'll mention later about him, but over to you, Pat.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you, Alistair. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. What I'm going to focus on is a quiet revolution that's happening in Belfast around the health arena. Something that began 4 years ago, but in my view is likely to have very significant impact, not just on health itself, but actually on the type of economy that we might become. I'm not going to necessarily address North-South issues today, though those of you in the room who know me know that I've been very heavily involved in North-South over the last 12 years, both as a founding director of SFI and the deputy chair of the Health Research Board, as well as leading the All-Ireland Cancer Consortium. So the topic that I'm going to address is the foundation of an Institute of Health Sciences as a partnership between Queen's and Belfast Trust, something that began in earnest 4 years ago when I took over as Dean of the School of Medicine, Dentistry and Biomedical Sciences. But I think more importantly, on the national UK stage, we now have one of the 6 MRC methodology hubs, which has already begun to reach into our health service and ask really fundamental questions, and may actually guide our health service in terms of its value dimension and how we reorganise going forward. And that's led 36, 37 countries across the world, and is seen as a major international player now in cancer research, but based in Belfast. These are some of the pictures of the inside. It's a very nice building. This is the Centre for Infection Immunity, which opened just 2 years ago. It now houses their board. And in my discussions with BIS, they are now directing us to work hand in glove with industry to begin to deliver in a way that the UK probably has never done. Why? Because when companies like Pfizer suddenly leave, and we suddenly lose 35 to 40,000 high-quality jobs, The health sector delivers somewhere between 15 to 18% of our GDP. That puts on a major warning bell right across the whole UK. So we need to have partnership now that goes way beyond anything we've ever done before. That means both sharing infrastructure. Alistair earlier made the comment around people, and I have to say I agree wholeheartedly with that. The investment in people and in leadership is really where this is going to happen. The skill sets where it's transferable. We train medical or dentists to think purely of becoming a medical person or a dentist, whereas in actual fact what we should be training them for is high quality analytical skills, and where they actually might become the next Nobel laureate or the founder of the next big diagnostic company. So fundamentally this is about partnership for society, one that cuts across health, industry, and also the investment community. Thank you very much indeed.
So, there's a lot going on there, and an enormous number of people involved in the cluster, 1,000 scientists on the one side. That's a really impressive figure. So, we have Tom Hegarty now, Associate Director of Operations at Warner Chilcott. They are indeed an island company in that they are headquartered in Dublin and have 40 people employed in the south and 170 people in the north, and that's out of a total worldwide employment number of 2,000. So Tom, I'm sure, will tell us more about the company.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. I want to start just by quickly thanking, and I know we're on a tight time scale here, thanking Alistair MacDonald and Fergal McKinney for the invite to come here today. Pharmaceutical companies do a good job at speaking with universities and letting them know that they're there. But I think we need to take a step back and really try and focus into schools and have children from an early age having a very good idea of what career they're going to undertake, and a career that's going to get them a job at the end of it, and more than that, it's going to get them a job that will be well paid. And it's more difficult, that challenge, than with universities. You can go to one campus for a school, for university, but development. And I wouldn't come up here and ask for specialised treatment in any way. I think we just need to be mindful of the industry. We need to be mindful of the value that it brings. And I think that's very important.
Determination is clearly one of Tom's strengths. Okay, now we have Phillip Diamond. I don't need to say anything about Almac. When I come up to Northern Ireland, it never ceases to amaze me how they are omnipresent. Even more from you, Phillip, particularly in the cluster context.
Okay, certainly. I think it's worthwhile mentioning at the start, certainly Tom mentioned about what a Chilcott originating out of Galen. What effectively you're hearing here now is the other part that came out of that. So we both came from the same beginnings, really.
This is a very powerful slide on our revenue source. You can see there, poor old Ireland, and that's looking north and south, is about 1% of our income. The UK would represent less than 10%. By far the biggest portion of the US is over 50%. Europe about 30%. And a growing end is sort of the Asia Pacific. That we see at about 10% at the minute, but a lot of opportunities there. So if you look at that as a whole, we last year turned 275 million sterling. If you think of that, all that money, virtually all of that, is money coming from outside the island into the island. And I mean, rather than running a building construction or whatever it would be, where you're circulating money within the economy, all of our money is coming outside for further use. And from a PwC, they did an economic impact survey on us a couple of years ago. And at that stage, with just over 1,700 employees in Craig, representing 24% of the total manufacturing jobs. But they estimated that we contributed at that point 265 million per year of gross input into the Northern Ireland economy. And if you looked on a 20-year spell, they estimate that we'd be creating over 6 billion into the economy. So obviously we're a massive contributor into the economy of the island. Nearly there. By our example, the global export potential, if you can bring money in from outside the island, so much the better for the growth of the whole island economy. And that's me.
I think that niche term is absolutely critical, obviously, for small island off an island of a challenged economy that is Europe. Adrian Thomas is next up from First Derivatives. I look forward to hearing more about it.
Okay, thanks Alistair, thanks Fergal for the invitation here today. I'm acutely aware, having been with First Derivatives since 2005, as a PLC, I'm one of only a few PLCs in Northern Ireland that there's a real interest in what First Derivatives do. In fact, there's even a sort of mystique attached to what First Derivatives do, because inevitably I meet people and they say, well, what does that company do? We don't really understand what First Derivatives do. In fact, even the term derivatives, there's a lot of complexity around that, and even bad press, I would say, in regard to it.
So we need to encourage young people to travel. The pressures that we have are in regards to the budgetary pressures that are impacting banks, is having an impact on our margin. And like the rest of our participants here this morning, obviously, as an Indigenous company in Northern Ireland, and someone who pitches, and a company that pitches Ireland as a single island economy, because when we sit on Wall Street and we're talking about why you should do business in Northern Ireland, for many people it's just one. We would very much welcome the whole corporation tax and a look at reducing the corporation tax that will lead us to our competitive position. Thank you.
I think that was an excellent note to end on from the speaker's point of view, which is the external perspective. The outside world sees it as one.
Very simply, I mean, there's a political veneer. Some of us are MPs and some of us are MLAs, some of us are. I just asked each of the speakers, what can we in the political community do to help you? What simple things? Because the great thing that distresses me about the various levels of genius and innovation and vision that each of you have is that somehow or other there's still a gap. And while we have had devolution here for some time functioning, you know, we're still not getting the glue together, as it were. And I mean, you need to be a bit more pushy in terms of making demands of us, but equally we have to be more available in reaching out to you. So, you know, in a word, I don't want to delay the thing, but I mean, how do we help?
Okay, with your permission, I'll take it from the right. Everyone, I think, should contribute to this.
I would say that in fairness to the executive, in recent years they have listened to First Derivatives, at least in terms of what needs to be done from an education perspective. And we've seen, particularly among our companies that operate in Northern Ireland in the capital markets industry, collaboration and non-competitive collaboration. But the linkages with the universities is absolutely key, and encouraging awareness of what the capital markets industry, for us at least, the employment opportunities, encouraging the schools to prepare, schools and universities to prepare young students with the right skills. We go to and recruit some graduates from the west coast of America, from Canada, from the US, and the quality of a computer science graduate coming from those regions is infinitely superior than what we would have here in Northern Ireland, I would argue. And why is that? Is because young computer science, young people in those companies are studying coding, they're writing computer code from 13, 14 and 15. We study business IT. Well, business IT is not computer science. Now, I don't want to get hung up on the computer science aspect because that's only one part of what we do. But I think we need, as an area, we need to really look at what are the emerging growth clusters, whether they're in IT, whether they're in medicine, whether they're in finance, and prepare our young people when they come from university, not having just generic and broad sort of whilst maybe there's a place for that also, but actually prepare people so that when they join the FD, when they join Almac, when they join other companies, they can hit the ground running.
I suppose likewise, certainly on the educational front, again, that focus, which is Ms. Edward applies to our too, where we often can't get the skill sets locally. I think further than that, though, still is the big amount that we're contributing into the economy. I think it's some way then of getting extra funding back out. I mean, if you look on it, say 10 years ago, it used to be all we talked about how much European money when the Republic compared to what came up here. I think there's some way if we can get additional funding to help us drive it forward. I mean, we are private. We're doing our best, and I do think we have the potential to become, even a fully fledged pharmaceutical company, development products right through. Obviously, we're constrained by that. I think it'd be fantastic if government help could help us get there.
As it passes by me, I mentioned on that very subject of EU funding, there was a Northern Ireland task force under President Barroso that produced a report a couple of years ago that was described to me by the person in charge of that process as a veritable cookbook of recipes for acquiring EU funding, but it never really got traction. And I always thought that was a bit of a missed opportunity, but perhaps it hasn't gone away.
I guess I'm just going to repeat probably what's been said before. Adrian mentioned even about the IT industry, but our real issue is educated graduates. Essentially, when we're Chilcott in Northern Ireland, it's an R&D company. We have manufacturing here, speciality, it's here for historic reasons, but it's getting those graduates, getting them in. I think it's having making sure that industry and the education authorities, and I think it's good, and I touched on it in the presentation, in the university, but I touched on it in the presentation about schools. I think there aren't even a pool of graduates going to university to study the required subjects. And I think, and I'll go back to the days when I was at school, I think it's just a bit of more education at that stage, that there are careers, and the kids need to be very, very clear about what the career path is they're going to take, and the likely outcome and the potential job that they would get from that. So I think it echoes exactly what's been said already. I would also take your point about we don't shout enough at politicians, and I know you've said that to me before, but we don't, and I think that's a lesson we need to take. We need to be telling people what we need, and I don't think we do that very well.
So, in addition to what's been said, I think there are three things. Investment, we have to recognise that the public sector and Northern Ireland funding is never going to stimulate the type of economy we want. We don't have enough money, so we have to leverage that money and be creative about how we do that, whether it's private sector, whether it's financial houses, international foundations, or whatever way we go about it. There isn't enough money in the Northern Ireland pot to actually really deliver on that in the absence of it. The second thing is people. You can't stay in Northern Ireland actually develop. You have to encourage our young people to go abroad, work abroad, and bring back expertise. So educational systems and structure around keeping people in Northern Ireland are actually a false economy. We have to encourage, in a global competitive base, that our young people and indeed others actually go globally. So why aren't we doing A-levels in Mandarin, for example? And then the final thing is networking and branding Northern Ireland. What is it we're really going to be good at as a society? And that's where politically we have to sit down and say, we want to be known for 2 to 3 things max across this world. When we do that and do it properly, then you have people coming here and